the recording. All right, so welcome everybody. I really appreciate you being here. I'm Mike Fritsch, and I'm joined by Kirby Hicks. You can see a little bit about us there on the slide, and of course in the LinkedIn event, there's a little more detail there. So again, this is being recorded, and I'll make the recording and the presentation available to everybody that signed up after the call. Throughout the presentation, there'll be some hyperlinks and such, so that if you want to reach out afterwards, feel free to do that. So a little bit about Confoe. What we do is provide consulting and support services that are focused on operational and project performance. And our primary focus is on the semiconductor industry and the supply chain serving semiconductors. And that's where our perspective is coming from in this talk. We've done additional work in software, manufacturing, construction, and actually some of the lessons that we've gathered from working in those industries are what we'll talk about today. The things that we do, if we were to put them in buckets, we do operational support and consulting, project support and consulting. We do work around Smartsheet and Power BI to improve operations. And then we also have our own suite of field install software. I'm not going to show you any of that stuff today. We're going to talk about FabRamp secrets, but if you're interested in what we do and how we can help you, just reach out to us after this. A little bit about our history. We started the company in 2002 after Kirby and I worked together inside Applied Materials for many, many years. And we got a deep knowledge and a lot of experience in semiconductors, especially in tool installs and fab ramps, based on the number of companies that we've consulted with over the years and our work inside Applied Materials. So we've been involved in over 20,000 capital tool installations. We've worked with over 40 capital equipment makers and suppliers. And, we've worked with a lot of companies that have been acquired. So we've, worked with Novellus before they got acquired and so on and so forth. And we've done 7+ fab factory ramps and factory construction projects. And so that's where a lot of this learning and our perspective has come from. And you can see just a few of the clients that we've worked with there. All right, so enough of the advertising. So, seamless tool installations, is that something that we really need, or are there still issues out there in the industry and in the fabs around being more seamless? Our experience says yes. We did a recent project in a well-known fab that went across all of the stakeholders, and the blocks on the above can kind of give you an idea of the various players that were involved. And, as we walked through and talked about the issues that I'm going to share with you today, these were some of the quotes right off of the factory floor, so, and I won't read them all to you except for the highlights, comments about that we have little real visibility. Sometimes we have a meeting to get an update. Sometimes, now no shade on the trades, but sometimes it seems like they check a box so they won't get yelled at. And I think the trades can say that about other people. And, sometimes the status is reliable, sometimes not. A lot of folks feel like they're working in a vacuum. And, a lot of people are chasing other people around to get dates and get updates. So we think that what we've observed in our various experiences is probably not unique, especially with the conversation. So given that there's issues, what is a seamless tool install? And in some ways, it's fairly simple in that, we're looking where everybody is on the same sheet of music, in real time. And I'm gonna mute everybody so we don't have any feedback. And I'm gonna let people unmute themselves. So I've just got you muted, and if you want to jump in and ask a question, since we've only got 19 folks, you can do that. But again, getting everybody on the same sheet of music, everybody seeing that same status in real time, and everybody agreeing on it, that's what we call a seamless tool install. And really, it's that ecosystem of the fab owner, the capital tool owner, and the trades and the OEMs servicing all of that, and everybody working together. And you know, the one of the most heartening quotes I had working with a project that we did, and one of the fab managers for a fab ramp, you know, he said, "Well, gosh, now that we're doing this, we don't have to sit around the table and lie to each other." So this is kind of what we're going to try to get at and share with you today. So you know, we talk about, you know, there's some issues there with coordination. You know, wouldn't it be nice to get everybody on the same sheet of music? But you know, why should we put some effort into that? And really, we think that there is some tremendous value in making that effort, and tremendous value for both the fab owner and for the tool makers, the trades, and everybody else. So, you know, in our perspective, you know, the industry has done a really good job of just every year after year squeezing out yield enhancements, squeezing out, you know, operations so that you decrease that yield ramp time. And we've done some modeling, say, well, what does it take to do that by 30 days? And it's very difficult. Or, you know, trying to reduce the fab cycle time and reduce that by 30 days, that's almost impossible now. But what we've found is that a seamless tool install, that you can improve the speed to good wafers out by 30 days or better with some pretty basic things that we're going to show you. And we've proven that a couple of times with fabs that called us in for schedule recoveries. I'm not going to get into any of those details today, just from the time that we have. But if any of you want to really dig deep or look at the math or look at case studies or ROIs, get with me afterwards. I'd be happy to share those with you. But, you know, so there's some benefits there on the fab side up at the top, but for everybody that's supporting the fab, there's a lot of benefits as well. You can really get some improved resource utilization if you're the a TEL or an applied or a KLA, or if you're a trade. You know, it's all this stuff of where you're not waiting around. Gives you an ability to really adjust to last minute schedule changes, where there's a pull in or a push out. Now, you guys working in the fabs, you may not get a lot of pull ins and push outs, but I always have. So maybe I've been unlucky, but I think that's kind of like the way of the world, and we just got to deal with it. But if you could deal with that better, there's tremendous value there. And kind of the last thing that goes to the heart of what we found is, you know, if you can get everybody with that good seamless install and good status, then you spend a lot less time kind of arguing about the status, trying to agree on what it is, and you spend more time taking action, which means you get better results and you get better over time, over and over again. And we've got 20 folks so far, so that's a great turnout. Again, just if there's something that you want to argue with or ask a question on, just hit the chat or unmute yourself. But we're going to have plenty of time at the end to kind of do a deeper dive and talk through it. So let's get to the heart of it. And you know, we talked about the top 5 ramp secrets to get you these seamless installations. And those 5 are here, and they look pretty simple, but they're not that simple to do. So what we think you've got to do is automate your status updating. You've got to make good communication happen, and you've got to use operational metrics. And those are kind of the foundational secrets. So you do those first, and you get a lot of benefit out of those in and of themselves, but they provide the platform to do those next 2, which is to really have this great chain of accountability that eliminates finger pointing and enables you to really do a continuous and a lean approach that allows you to do performance plan and performance manage that really, really gets you better and better and better. And we originally intended, we were like, we're going to hit all 5 of these in this session. And as Kirby and I put it together, we were like, oh my gosh, that's trying to put too much in. And so we've scheduled another session down the road where we will go in more detail on 4 and 5. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me jump right into it. So automating status communication, what really is effective is you want to get that status from the Gemba. So the status from the factory floor status from the folks that are actually doing the work. And what we've found is you want to get in there, and as much as possible, you want to replace Excel and you want to replace emails. And you know, the two pictures on the right are sometimes what I've felt like in some of those environments. You're getting buried in a bunch of Excel sheets, or you're getting flooded with a bunch of emails to keep track of things. Either that, or you're doing all these phone calls, you're doing all these meetings, like the previous quote we saw. You're having a meeting to get a status. So really want to have a way to make it easy for status to be updated, shared, and viewed by everybody. And you do that through automation. And the reason for that is it's going to kill the benefits of poor communication. And you might be surprised when I say there's some benefits to that. And it's going to encourage good communication. And so the way that we'll do that is you work through what's called collaborative work management tools. And we'll talk a little bit about them in subsequent slides. But you want to leverage those, and you want to leverage business intelligence, reporting, and data visualization tools. And all that stuff sounds, you know, maybe a little complicated, but it's not really that much if you choose a low-cost, low-code, no-code tool, and you choose something that's easy to adopt. So there's a lot of choices out there, and the important thing is to enable the steps that we're talking about. But we got some preferences on how you do that, and we'll share a little bit about that. But by no means are you limited to that one direction. So with that, let's talk next. So I talked about, well, nobody likes poor communication, right? You've probably seen this around the internet here and there. I've seen it, you know, the 6 benefits of poor communication. And I've seen it out there, and people say, I don't know where it came from. Well, it actually, we're getting a little bit fuzzy here and a little bit psychological. These 6 benefits of poor communication came out of the Psychoanalytic Review in 1971 by somebody named C.O. Kirsch. And really, he's talking more here about interpersonal stuff. And, you know, if you're kind of fuzzy, maybe you can kind of hide that you've planned things poorly. You can, you know, change your mind and say you didn't. You can, you know, a fuzzy message has little opposition or criticism. You can kind of say 2 different things. You know, so sometimes maybe there's a personal benefit of being a little unclear. You know, in a business situation, that could come around to bite you. You might violate some trust. And of course, you know, in a fab, we'd never allow that, right? So a fab, we're operationally savvy. This is important stuff. We're in a sophisticated industry, and we'd never allow poor communication. We just wouldn't tolerate it. Well, sometimes it's harder to, some things are harder to do than to say, but, you know, we often see these. Fab tool owners are building their own Excel spreadsheets to track tool status. You know, that status gets rolled up, but it's not visible to construction managers, so they don't really know what's going on. The tool engineer and the trades aren't coordinated, and something goes on unnoticed, and we've got a bunch of finger pointing. Often, maybe there's not an audit trail for the status updates, and so, you know, we get to the end of the installation, or we get to the end of the phase, and, you know, we're not remembering who did what, you know. So, you know, the customer maybe said, hey, we're going to have the safety inspection on Tuesday, and they changed it to Thursday, but then the tool engineer wasn't there on Thursday. It was like, no, it was Tuesday I was supposed to show up. And so all of these things tend to have a domino effect. And, you know, on the capital tool side of things, we often, you know, we work with some VPs of field service, and they often complain. It's like, gosh, my guys are always telling me I don't have enough engineers to support the customer. I'm never going to make the schedule. You know, give me 3 more guys, or the customer's demanding 3 more people. But at the end of the day, we met all the installation times, and we didn't have all the engineers that we needed. And we just don't have a good picture of what happened or why it happened. So I'm going to pause here. We're making good time. I mean, has anything I've said so far, are you going, Mike, you must be in the worst fabs in the world. I have never seen this. Our stuff is as smooth as you would ever see. And would anyone disagree with any of these points so far? Okay, that's usually the reaction I get. People go, yeah, that's the dirty secret. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Mike, I'm not sure if you unmuted everybody or if they can unmute themselves individually.
Yeah, they can unmute themselves individually.
Okay, all right.
Everybody has the permission to do that. Okay, great. All right, so, sometimes we do, I think, have poor communication in the fab. So we want to get around that, and we want to encourage good communication. And so doing something different requires some change management, And so what we found is we go in and do these type of things. If you're going to get a change, you got to make it easier than the old way. It's got to be easier for the, and I'm seeing that my scroll. Okay, I'm getting some good feedback, and okay, but basically in the chat box we're getting some responses that are, yeah, this is pretty common. But you want to make it easier for the persons working in the fab and for their managers. And part of that reinforcement is really, if you do it right, what we found is you're going to improve kind of the self-esteem and job satisfaction, especially of that engineer on the floor, because he or she is in there working really hard, and sometimes they feel underappreciated or like nobody sees what's going on. And so when we have this good status, the manager can see, when you're on schedule, they can recognize that. But probably the biggest reward and the biggest impact is we see much quicker responses to automated communications and escalations. And so, in other words, it's like if we've got the real-time status, everybody can see it, we're sharing it across the stakeholders, an issue comes up, you don't have to chase somebody down, you don't have to wait to the next meeting, you don't have to send an email, it pops up for folks, they get into the habit. And the first couple of times that the new way of communicating fixes a problem really quick, then everybody starts jumping on it because it's like, oh man, I didn't have to wait around. So we found that it's a it's a virtuous cycle, if you will, self-perpetuating, that kind of encourages people to participate more and more. So, Kirby, you've got a great analogy about trying to lose weight. And do you want to pipe in and kind of describe this?
Well, sure. It's pretty straightforward. I was thinking about, gosh, you can talk about these things, but how do you really reward somebody? What is the process you go through? And because what we've found is that good communication tools exist. It's very difficult to change what people have always done to go use those tools. And so what happens every year after the holidays, right? You get all these commercials about how to lose weight. And I thought, well, that Nutrisystem is pretty good. They actually make it easier for you to eat. You don't have to prepare your own meals. You feel better about yourself because you start to lose weight. Even without working out, you can still sit on the couch. So you haven't changed a whole lot. Your friends start telling you you're looking good, and now I'm going to stick with Nutrisystem. So you've made a step in the right direction. And that's what we'd like to see, and we have seen when people get out from under the huge burden of email traffic, because reporting tends to follow the path of emails, whether it's Excel spreadsheets being traded or PowerPoint or just, hey, here's what's going on. That's reinforcing that it's easier to keep track of what's going on and communicate with the system like we are talking about, collaboration work management system. So you start feeling better about what's going on. You feel like, you get a good feedback from your manager using the new tools, and they can see what's happening and work with you more effectively from outside the fab. And by the way, that large fab that we worked with last year was in the middle of the pandemic, and it made it a lot easier during that phase where we were using these tools to see down into the fab and to get information out with fewer people in the fab. A lot of people had to try to do their jobs from outside the fab. So that's an additional benefit that you get when you begin to automate your communications in this way. And so you get some benefits, you redouble your efforts to maintain the use of, that in-app communication to operate more effectively.
Great, thanks, Kirby.
That's my example. And we'll circle back to it in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, and so we've talked about the first two of automating the status updates and encouraging the good communication. And one of the mistakes that we often see is trying to drive operational performance with financial data. And there's some problems with that. And so, the first one is it's coming in too late for you to really do something about it. So, and this may be more true on the capital equipment makers, the Lambs and the Tokyo Electrons and the Applied Materials and so on. But if you're just kind of looking at what's been charged to a tool and using your financial systems, there's a lag in the data, and it's that classic cliche of trying to drive by looking through the rear view mirror. You're not getting the precise data you need, and you're not getting the data you need quick enough to make adjustments in real time. And also, you're not getting enough detail to operationally hone in on what has to change. The other problem is that financial data will sometimes give you the wrong incentives. As you're looking at this, I'm sometimes, probably none of your folks would ever do this, but I've seen it where, the first tool comes into a fab and the engineers are not sure, where to charge their time. And so tool number one, everybody's putting their hours against tool number one. And heck, they may be even charging replacement parts against that first tool. And so using financial data to drive improvement, if you pull up after the fact, you go, gosh, that first CVD tool or that first etch tool, that thing had $200,000 in charges, and the next three tools were $5,000. But wow, was that a dog tool? Did we learn a lot, or did we just not charge? Or maybe you don't do that, but it's like, okay, I've got three tools in there, and I know that I'm out of budget on tool number two. I don't want to make any way, so I'm going to charge my stuff against tool number three. So that may not happen that frequently, but I've seen it enough times. The other thing is that sometimes there is a counter incentive to doing well by, the more I charge, the more I earn. Maybe not as a person, obviously, but either cross-charging through departments, or I get paid by the hours that my engineers work, or I actually make more if I get a change order or two. So if you're trying to drive all of your operations and drive improvement from financials, it's often inadequate. And what we find what that tends to do is, who can tell me, put in the chat what this picture is on the right. Just to see if everybody's awake. Anybody have a clue?
Ground Hog Day.
Ground Hog Day, yes. So there's Bill Murray, and it's a heck of a movie. It's very funny. But he wakes up. He's covering Groundhog Day in Pennsylvania, Puxatony, Phil. But he wakes up and it's the same day over and over and over again. And we've had folks. I don't remember exactly who told us. He said it feels like Groundhog Day in the fab. It's like we had this same problem yesterday. We're going to have it tomorrow. We keep saying we're going to fix it, or I've had engineers go say, well, you know, I'm working at the Intel, I'm working in Fab 1, then I go over to another city and work in Fab 2, and they're doing everything different. And it's, you know, it's like we're reinventing the wheel, and we have to figure it out all over again. And so that's kind of the pitfall that you have if you're stuck with financial data and trying to run better installations and seamless installations only off of finances. And so what you need to do, the third foundational one, is you've got to use operational metrics, not financial metrics. And those metrics have to be coming out of the maintaining the status. So you're taking a look at the various tasks, when things are getting done, you're looking at missed deadlines, you've got the status that people are using to update their job in real time. That can drive your metrics. And you want those metrics to be automated as possible. So you don't want to have somebody grabbing a bunch of stuff in Excel, making charts and sticking them in PowerPoint, and you look at it once a week. No, you want to have something automated that you can take a look at. And beyond that, you want it to be role-based along with the real time. You know, so that I don't have to look at the information that's not relevant to me. I can look at the stuff that I can take action on and make decisions on. And because we want to do something where we've got different folks working together, whether it's the fab owner, various equipment makers, the trades, you can do this in such a manner that you can share information that is okay to share and keep private information that's you want to keep private. So the thing that we did, we had a tool supplier, Tokyo Electron, who uses us and says, yeah, you can talk about us. And we did this other fab, and for Tokyo Electron on their statuses, in the update status, we simply had a box for them where they would click an internal comment. And so if there was something where maybe the engineers are working on something that they go, you know, I don't want to air my dirty laundry to the customer, but this is an issue. I'm just going to say we're delayed, but I don't want to say why right now. Those type of things are important to do because it eases the communication, and it gives you the ability that you all work together in trust and you don't have to reveal something confidential. And that's really important for the fab owner when we do set something up like this and you're doing these seamless installations across multiple tool vendors. That way, an applied guy or gal doesn't see what's going on with Tokyo Electron or with Lam and vice versa. So you want to do that. You want to make sure the reports are looking at both the short-term and the longer-term trend goals. So not only like, how is this individual startup going, but you know, how have all the startups of this particular fab line gone, or of this particular technology, or in this particular wave? You want to be able to easily cut it, slice and dice, so you can take a look at what's going on and keep your eye on the immediate tactical stuff, as well as kind of the more midterm, where the trend's going. And then along with that, if you can have you know, a vision of the future, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and have that communicated with everybody, then you've got some goals that people can work from. You know, and we left that in there. I think I was going to take this bullet out, but just to reinforce, I mean, have you ever seen, again, charging to the first tool in the fab or the tool that has budget left? And so being able to do improvement, there's just no way that you can keep track of that. Let me pause there. That was a big, long lecture. Any comments or thoughts or disagreements on that one? You can just unmute yourself. Okay, great. And I'll let Kirby speak to this one because he's the guy that's a triathloner. So.
Well, I'm also taking the lightweight slides, and you're taking the heavyweight slides. So I like that just fine. So with that analogy of losing weight, everybody hits a plateau if they stay on the couch. And so part of eliminating Ground Hog Day is being able for everyone, from workers in the fab all the way up to the general managers, to be able to see, are you making progress against where you were in the past? And so with Nutrisystem, that means you've got to get up and start working out and start watching that scale a little closer and set some goals. And that's the simple analogy that we're making here. once you have the system in place, we find it's very beneficial to, in as much as is possible, drill your KPI improvement metrics down through the data that you're able to collect. And I'm talking about this without actually having shown you anything that has to do with taking off the analytics, but Mike mentioned it before. We have tools to do this. There's a lot of tools to do that. Our bias is we like the lower cost, higher performance ones like Power BI. And when you're using real-time data, you can pull that data and create the analytics that'll allow you to start driving against real goals. We know there's real issues in the fab. This isn't all just about good or bad communication, but when you have good communications, you're able to anchor part issues, real job interrupts to the time in the process where it took place. And then you use this classic Pareto approach to say how much of this is happening and start driving that out of the system.
Great. And
the last thing I'd add is for the BHAG analogy of a triathlon. Well, it's not a really great analogy because it's all focused on that one contributor. It's still good, but when you start sharing your data laterally to adjacent organizations that are stakeholders, and with your customer, and with suppliers where it makes sense, for auxiliary equipment or whatever is in line to provide value in the fab, then you can start sharing some goals with each other and taking on, historically problematic issues where you're not aligning your people in the fab as well as you could. You're all on your own project management systems, or you're all not on project management at all. You're using Excel or whatever it may be. So improved communications allows you to connect with and coordinate outside of your own organization securely, and only share what those individuals need to see.
Great, thank you. And so, one of the things I mentioned at the beginning was our main focus is working in semiconductor industry, but we do work in other industries like multi-site construction. And actually, I'll turn this over to Kirby again in a minute. But, gosh, hey, we're semiconductor, we're high tech. Nobody's got more complexity than us, right? I mean, look at that. Look at all those fabs around the world. Look at all those different technologies and the different equipment types. And oh my God, nobody's got a challenge like ours. Well, yeah, in some ways, but in some ways not. And Kirby, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next two slides, but maybe talk about the complexity that is multi-site construction, and then the lessons that we've learned from supporting that industry. Oh, I think you're still muted, Kirby.
Okay, I was definitely still muted. So thanks, Mike. As a company, we wanted to expand beyond the semiconductor industry segment, and portability is always an issue as to whether your approach is going to be valid or valuable outside of your own segment. And so it was very interesting to us to go into several different multi-site construction operations and basically bring the first three secrets to success here into those organizations and see what we can do to help them. We felt pretty confident that with our experience with extremely complex projects that we could deliver some value. And indeed we did. I think the ability to communicate better, to track your projects better inside the GC organizations we worked with was beneficial to them. But we actually saw something happen that caught us a little off guard. And are you on slide 18, Mike? I'm actually on slide.
We're still on. I'm just putting up the McDonald's. What can McDonald's tell us about status?
Right. So, all right. Well, we worked on major rebranding initiatives and construction projects across multiple different kinds of businesses: 7-Eleven, Costco, Walmart, McDonald's. And the McDonald's project was very interesting because when McDonald's corporate decides they want to change the branding of every single franchise in the United States, they're very serious about that. And the branding change we were involved with was not only the new signs, the new exterior finishes, the touch screens inside to order your food. It also included sole sourced kitchen equipment that is installed by the kitchen equipment installers. And so now you're adding a layer of complexity across thousands of sites in the United States, managed by region, deployed by construction managers from McDonald's, individual franchise owners, and multiple different GCs in those regions trying to work together to limit the amount of time a franchise location was closed. The goal was 2 weeks to do all the demolition, put everything back together, and have everything working, because a week is hundreds of thousands of dollars when that store is closed. They do an incredible amount of business. So we're providing value to the GC. We're helping them look at everything and keep track of what they have in play. But we were still having situations where the equipment, which was somewhat constrained on allocation, does that sound familiar? Was hard to track, as well as the engineers that go with the equipment to a location where they were ready to install that equipment. And franchise owners were livid. I went to a meeting where it was very unpleasant with McDonald's corporate in Florida. And the franchise owners were in there, and they were losing it because they were having to stay shut down longer than 2 weeks because of delays incurred. Well, the thing that happened, and I'm talking about it, and you've probably read the slide, but the thing that actually happened was that single franchise owners implemented the CWM file to track their shipments, their engineers, and they shared that with everybody who was a stakeholder in the project. So now McDonald's corporate could see what's going on relative to the installs of this equipment. Each franchise owner could pace their shutdown based upon what they were seeing, and they were having to monitor last minute changes. And so the GCs were making adjustments to the work they were doing to allow for a 2 or 3 day shift of an install. And in the end, the result was fabulous. And there was not a thing we could have done with all of our learnings from the semiconductor industry to have pulled that off. McDonald's Corporation did not have an approach or a system to do that. So the end client had no ability to do it. But one supplier, following these 3 secrets to success in the wafer fab, made an enormous difference. And so I love that example. It's clearly not from our industry, but it taught me a lot, seeing how well that played. And we've been really big on utilizing CWM in our projects ever since.
Great, thanks, Kirby. And I referenced the collaborative work management and talked about it. And there's the ones that and as well as the business intelligence and the visualization, and the combination that we've settled on for us in our own company and for our clients is we like to use a combination of Smartsheet and Power BI. I'm not going to go into detail on these. I'm not selling either of these to you today. Just check out collaborative work management. And while you do that, then make sure you check out Smartsheet and Power BI if you're not familiar with those. And the little thing I've got here on the side is just the Forrester Wave report on collaborative work management. And you can check that out if you'd like, or contact me to get a copy. But basically, Smartsheet is the leader in this space and an award winner in this space, and that was one of the reasons that we chose it. So, but using that, then what the heck does it look like? So you've been talking, Mike, talking, but okay, yeah, sounds good. But give us an example. And so this is a sanitized example of real life. This is where we built for a fab owner an automated project status of all the tool installs going into the fab. And you can see here, and again, this is all fake data. It's not no real system numbers are in there, and so on. But you know, the fab owner normally has limited visibility of tool install status, right? The situation is the supplier status is reported by these individual suppliers, by the internal tool owners. You know, you get, maybe it's reported by PowerPoint or Excel, and aggregating that all up is really hard to do. What we did was leverage CWM and project tools. So we used that to aggregate the data in real time. And so all the updates to the schedules are immediately updated to the business intelligence, in our case, Power BI reports. The key milestones are automatically shared with each of the adjacent stakeholders and the construction managers, and the construction tool install managers can now see into the fab. And so to give you an example, and we've got the follow-on session, we'll show you a little more, but take a tool install and think of all the milestones and activities that take place in that, regardless of whether you're AMAT or you're LAM or whoever. But in those are some milestones and some activities that you're dependent on trades or the pump supplier, or you're dependent on wafers. Imagine taking those milestones out of your schedule and exposing them to the folks that share it with you and have to perform it, or the folks that are waiting on you to do something in order for them to do the next step. And doing that in an automated fashion with a schedule, and when you update the status, they see what's happening. And so that's part of what we did here, so that as things move back and forth, you didn't have to have a meeting. You could look and go, oh, hey, the trades, you know, gas lines are delayed one day. I'm going to move my guy to tool, you know, this other tool, and then we'll circle back. Didn't have to have a big old meeting about it. So that's a simple example, and in the next session we can go a little bit more deeper. But from the fab owner, that's kind of looking across all of the tools, all of the trades. And the reason we liked Power BI was that we could do it role-based, so that you know, the etch folks would only see etch, and the other folks would only see their technology, and like the trades would only see the things that are relevant to them. So pipe fitting wouldn't have to see pumps, vice versa. Protect the IP and also make things less busy. As an aside, everything that we're talking about is mobile enabled, so that it works on a phone or a laptop or a tablet, which is really important to help the folks you know, work wherever they need to. And you know, with this, everybody could understand the true critical path, right? And then you divert workers to where they can work. So that makes a huge difference. Kirby, I'm still on the fab owner slide example. Do you want to add anything?
No, Mike, that's very good. I'll pick up on the next slide though.
Okay. All right. And so I'm showing the capital equipment maker, the automated report for them, and I'll let Kirby speak to this.
This is a simpler, deliverable, easier to implement example than the entire wafer fab example Mike just talked about. When you were just simply replace individual managers' Excel spreadsheets with a similar looking spreadsheet in the CWM tool, Mike pointed out we use Smartsheet, they're keeping their schedules up to date at the site, even while the ERP system has been designed to do, you know, one-stop shop. We all know the guys on site are using an Excel spreadsheet in order to interact with their customer and keep up with what's happening on a daily basis. They like to hold that in their hand. They like to be able to compare it with what's in the ERP system, that financial system. But the real status of when a tool is going to come into the factory, that's in everybody's hands across the site and across the product categories. Simply converting that into Smartsheet allows several things to happen. It allows their status to be updated, number one, immediately into Power BI reports, so that if you're running the entire business, you can see that top chart, which is just the graphical portion of it. There's data tables associated with it as well. But you can see how many tools, this is a simple example, how many tools are docking, are actually set to move into the wafer fab by business unit by month. And at the same time, the next level down, a business unit manager may just want to look at their own tools. They're all looking at the same data, by the way, but they will see the graphs on the bottom. The one on the bottom left is their tools going into wafer fabs that they're responsible for by tool type. The one on the right is the same set of tools, only it's showing you which customer sites it's going into. And you can continue to slice and dice this down in a lot of granularity. And this is just one example of what comes out of data that's being maintained in a distributed fashion. But I thought it's a very good one, because people tend to make these roll-ups and look at what's going on with their backlog on a periodic basis. And it takes time, and they have to contact the people out in the field. They send in their information, they do their roll-ups, you aggregate it, and now you put it into a PowerPoint. Well, this information goes immediately into a PowerPoint. And some will say, well, gosh, how do you know it's correct? Well, what we found is that when people are using the data that's coming directly off the individual's master schedules, that any issues or errors are immediately spotted and corrected, and they continuously go down. So you have fewer and fewer errors over time. And those schedules tend to be maintained up to date more frequently, and tend to be more pristine, as one of our customers would call it, because of that connection to the rest of the world. Local formats begin to merge, but you can still have differences in the formats, and the data will not be affected. So what I mean is, you can have different columns you're tracking of information all in this environment, but the reports that are taken off of it in Power BI only look at the fields that are needed for those reports. And so people have a lot of flexibility when they implement this capability instead of Excel. Now, it is a new capability they have to learn, granted, but once they're in it, it saves them a lot of time and communications, and the audit trail feature that allows them to actually look at and answer their own question. Gee, did I update that tool? You can turn an audit painter on that'll highlight, the fields that you've updated in the last hour, the last day, or last week. And so you can answer your own question and then drill down and see how many changes have actually been made. So the auditability of the reports and the ability to share them in a role-based fashion, either through CWM or externally output through an analytics tool like Power BI, is very powerful. And we've seen good use made of that at our account.
Yep, thanks, Kirby. And so that was the last of the presentation part. What I'll say is, we gave you the basics. To learn more, stay for the Q&A. So if you want to kind of dig in, we're happy to keep talking. Reach out offline. We can set up some one-on-one, and then take a look on LinkedIn. We've got 2 more sessions scheduled. So on August 4th, we're going to get in nuts and bolts and actually show you Smartsheet and Power BI and how we use it in these situations. So again, check out whatever collaborative work management tool you want to use. We've got our preference, but we'll show you how the thing actually works. And then on about a month from now, we're going to go through the part 2 of the secrets, which is getting into more depth on using this to apply lean methodology and doing some other things to actually drive performance that we've done in the past of, just year-on-year savings that are just incredible. And we'll talk about those. So in the presentation are the links, and the hot links work when I send this out after the fact, so you can just click on them. And again, just if you're ready to get going now, you don't even want to wait on a session, reach out to us. We can help you with any of these 4 things. And I'm more than happy to kind of talk to you about Smartsheet or talk to you about our kind of what we've learned and how we apply it. So I want to thank everybody for being on, and we are going to, we'll stickle around, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And then if anybody wants